in the Caribbean. What the heck were they up to? I'll tell you in this edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what up? I'm Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars, your daily podcast here about the Jacksonville Jaguars on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we're free on all platforms. And we thank you for making us your first listen as usual. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I promised you that I was going to talk about Trevor Lawrence. So we're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence. First, I got to let you guys know that Trevor and his gang of receivers and tight ends and anybody else that looked like they were going to catch passes from him took a field trip. And I say that jokingly, but pics leaked out on Trevor's social media as well as Jaguar social media and shout out to my man too, Striving for Lot, who is doing social media with the Jaguars, a Jacksonville native. He's a good friend of my son's, and he came back home, had been doing some work at Jackson State with Deion Sanders. So he's back and he puts out good content. So shout out to Striving for Lot. Trevor, I'm not going to mention the island. I'm not going to mention the destination because who knows, somebody might want to sponsor us to another destination one day. But I'll tell you this, my favorite place to vacation is in the Caribbean. I know a lot of people like to go to Europe, but I love going to the Caribbean. And I was planning on talking about Trevor and the things that he has to do to improve on the field. We're going to get to that too. I'll tell you how these new receivers are going to have an effect of Trevor Lawrence and whether or not I think he needs a little bit more to help him. We'll do that too. But first, we're going to talk about this field trip. I saw all the tight ends. I saw Christian Kirk. I saw a number of wide receivers. I think Marvin Jones, Laquan Treadwell. I don't want to miss anybody, but Laviska Shenault. You name them, they were there. They went on a vacation with Trevor Lawrence, and they were out working. So the fan in all of us wants to go, this is what they need to do. This is how they need to get it done. I got a little news flash for you. This is kind of what everybody does around the league. They may not go to an island full of blue water that you can see through, but most of the times in the league when guys have a chance and they know who's going to be on their team, they always get together and they play pitch and catch. I just like the fact that they were doing it. Okay, I also like the fact that there's something that I noticed. And it might be the fact that I'm looking at it through a lens just like everyone else, but I was all prepared to tell you guys how much I thought Trevor needed to improve his physique a little bit. Now, I'm not talking about, I ain't trying to say the man's bad body or nothing like that. Who am I to talk about somebody's shit? But Trevor's a little on the thin side. I think it was listed last year at 6'6", 220 or something like that. I thought that, in order for him, as he starts to progress and get a little bit older, he needs to get a little bit bigger to absorb some of that punishment that may be coming towards him because he also likes to get out and run. It looks like he's more muscular than he's been in the past. I'll be the first to say it. It looks like Trevor Lawrence has picked up. Now, I don't know how much he's picked up. I'm not going to sit here and start trying to act like I'm going to guess a guy's weight. But it appears to me that Trevor Lawrence has gotten a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger, and he looks just more physically imposing than he has in the past. I think that helps him a number of ways. We don't want our quarterback getting hit, but if he does get hit, you want him to be able to absorb it a little bit. The other thing is when he does take off and run, he probably won't look as gangly doing it. There was a couple of times I held my breath last year because when you're that long and you have that Michael Phelps shape to you, or you have that build like a basketball player, but you're playing football, it just seems like when you get hit, body parts start slinging and flying all over the place, and it makes you hold your breath a little bit. But I think just by being bigger and physically stronger and having a more foundation in his set, he'll probably be able to throw the ball a little bit better, power through some things, especially on the close yard. He did a real good job last year on quarterback sneaks. This will help when it comes to quarterback sneaks. And I know you guys are saying, Wig, these are all little things, man. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the little stuff, because the little stuff is the difference between you winning a close game and losing a close game. So it was good to see. It's good to see Trevor over there working out with his teammates. It's also very good to see that he looks like he's a little bit more physical. And then it looks like he had a 100% attendance from everyone who could possibly catch a pass from here this year. So you see the teammate and the camaraderie and the fellowship and all of that stuff. And I think it just goes a long way. It tells me that these guys weren't beaten down and they weren't defeated based on the experiences they had from last year. It's really a feeling like we are all in this together. I'm telling you. I can't imagine if they had not made a coaching change. Can you? I couldn't. But seeing the way that these guys react today, these days, and respond to each other, it really tells you that they were really in this together last year. And man, I tried to come on these podcasts and tell you how bad it felt and just how bad it seemed when you were around the situation. And you can look at guys' body language before and tell that it was just not the way that it was supposed to be. So Trevor Lawrence and his gang of receivers take a field trip and go overseas. What effect will that have on this season? We're going to talk about the new additions. We're also going to talk about some of the old parts. We're going to go through 1 through maybe like 5 or 6. And then in segment 3, we're going to see if that's enough and what they might need to do in the future. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about if they're not able to be as good in that area as you'd like, and if it means gloom and doom. We'll get to that in segment 3 also. All right, man. So hang tough as we get ready to get into these wide receivers and tell you what all of this means for the training camp, which is coming in less than a week. That's right. Training camp is almost here. So we'll get into it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I just flat out tell you, man, growing up without money, growing up, pretty much on the poor side of life, there were sometimes my grandmother and even my mom had to stretch things a little bit further. I didn't understand when I was a child, but I surely understood once I grew up and became an adult, and I had to do those same things, especially when the kids are really small and they're all in daycare and you have that extra expense. Sometimes you need a little extra cash and you don't know where to get it. If you're like me, pride, you don't want to ask anyone for anything. So you want to ask yourself, the future you that you know you're going to end up earning more money. What if you can get a little bit of money from yourself? The Dave app will help with that. And that's DAVE, right? The Dave app is a banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or just catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out and keeping you up at night without any hangups. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for extra cash for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. I'm going to tell you again, that's dave.com/legal. Now, if you read that little disclaimer on the screen right there, if you're watching on YouTube, you will understand all of the things that you need to do. Make sure you go to dave.com/legal when going on the Dave app. It's a lot of people using it. You can use it too. You have to understand that for terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, and they are a member of FDIC. And I am TWIGG, as I'm affectionately known around here in Jacksonville as T-Wig, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. You see all of these things coming out, man, about where guys are rated on these games and all of that. I tell you what else you can do. Which you want to know which stars of the betting line are moving the betting line the most starting July 18th, which was yesterday. Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th, which is yesterday, on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Now, it's very important that you understand that there's a Jaguar on there, and the odds to win the MVP usually very, very quarterback heavy. So I'll just preface that by giving you that little tidbit. But we're talking Trevor Lawrence and his wide receivers. They're hanging out down in the Caribbean, getting a little bit of sun, getting a little bit of, I'm suspecting, eating some fish and some ceviche and enjoying some Mai Tais right before training camp gets started. But they're also putting in work. They're playing pitch and catch in that heat, in that hot sun. There's nothing like work when it's like a vacation, right? I wish I could do that right now. But those guys got a lot of work in. So how do we get all of this stuff to translate into meaningful stuff on the football field this year? Well, you can't help, reps are reps, right? And I love the fact that Trevor had on his helmet and his shoulder pads, because that's how a quarterback's going to throw the ball. Now, camaraderie is one thing. It's good to build that continuity with guys that are new, so that they know how that ball comes. I've heard wide receivers in the past say they had to get used to how the ball was going to show up from certain quarterbacks, the angles of his arm, and how he throws it, and the velocity, and how it varies from quarterback to quarterback. You can imagine catching the ball from Trevor Lawrence, catching the ball from Gardner Minshew are two different things. But more importantly, you have to just wonder how is it going to affect, or how any of this stuff affects this season. Folks are going to forget all about the workouts. They're going to forget about Trevor looking bigger and stronger. They're going to forget about the extra work. They're going to forget about all of that stuff if the Jaguars don't have a successful passing game. I think they'll have a successful passing game because I think the offensive line will improve. I think the threat at running back and the way the offense is going to be used will improve. And one guy I'm really, really looking forward to is Evan Ingram. And the reason why I'm looking forward to Evan Ingram, because when healthy, Evan Ingram is a very, very, very athletic and good football player. There are two guys, Evan Ingram and Jordan Reed. And Jermichael Finley's the third guy. I promise you, I've thought, man, if those guys could stay healthy over the last 15 years, I'm thinking those are some guys that I really thought could have made a huge impact in the league. But Evan sort of stayed healthy last year, and he was paid like a guy with a lot of potential. I just know in a Doug Peterson offense, how they moved and lined Zach Ertz up outside a lot. And I think that's what you're going to see with Evan Ingram. You're going to see him on the field, and you're going to see other wide receivers on the field. They're going to split him out to one side, and he's actually going to probably be lined up on a linebacker or a safety who can't play with him. And I think that isolation is going to benefit the Jaguars. It's going to benefit Trevor Lawrence. It's going to be one of those things that on 3rd and 6 gets you 7 every single time, and then it's also going to help in the red zone. Christian Kirk, I just watched the game last night when the Packers it was a real good game too. Packers and the Cardinals played last year, and I saw his impact. I saw how quick he gets in and out of his breaks. I saw how he could sit down in the middle of a seam and catch the ball in traffic. I really do think he's going to be another welcome addition to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I also know he can get deep. He can get deep. If you play around with it, Christian Kirk can run right past you. And then the other thing I like about Christian Kirk is Christian Kirk really he turns into a return specialist once he gets the ball, because he used to be a punt return. I think Marvin Jones Jr., or is it Marvin Jones Sr.? Marvin Jones Sr., I'm thinking about college football now. Marvin Jones Sr., he's going to probably play the same as he did last year. However, what was perceived as not a good season because the team wasn't good is going to be perceived as a better season this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's 2nd or 3rd in receptions. And if there are some games when he actually leads the team in receptions, he's a pass catcher. He's a route running, professional NFL route running and pass catcher, a guy that has the respect of a lot of people around the league, including his teammates. So he'll be good. I think Laquan Treadwell's going to have a tough time. He's going to battle. I think they like him a lot because of his big body and how he worked hard last season. He doesn't cost a lot of money. And he's also approaching that area of being an NFL professional pass catcher because he caught some balls last year. I think he's going to really, really help this team, especially red zone, and being probably a depth guy at number 4, number 5 receiver. So look for Laquan Treadwell to push in training camp as well. I haven't mentioned Zay Jones yet, and you probably think you should be mentioning Zay Jones because they paid him to be mentioned earlier. I like what I saw in terms of separation from him at OTAs. He is a sneaky speed about him, and then he's a little taller than I imagine. You think 6 feet. No, he's 6'2". So Zay Jones is a nice, solid addition to this team. Hadn't done much in the last few years until last year, the second half of last year in Oakland. And I think he's going to be pretty good. Now, the wild card here is Laviska Shenault. Laviska Shenault is an absolute wild card for this team. I don't know if there's a receiver who's outside of Christian Kirk because of his contract. I don't know if there's a guy who has had his name mentioned as much as Laviska Shenault has when it comes to what we're looking for. First, I heard some trade rumors about him all the way going back to the Senior Bowl. Then he wasn't moved, and then there was just debate in the media whether or not it should even be thought about that he moves or that they move him, and they didn't. He's still here, and he's been working his butt off. He shows up when he doesn't necessarily have to as a veteran. To put himself in the mind of the coaches. I haven't seen or heard about him dropping any passes, and it was an odd thing. Like beginning of the last season, he was looked at as this guy. I used to hear people say Anquan Boldin, Andre Johnson. That's how you heard folks talking about Laviska after his before his rookie year, and then after he had some success as a rookie. But then last year, it was like he was the forgotten man, to the point where the Jaguars went out and added 2 guys in free agency. So it's going to be a big, interesting year for him to see exactly where he is and how they decide he's going to be a part of this team. That's why training camp is so important, man. It is so important to watch these preseason games. It's so important to watch how these guys are going to be used. And that's the key, because this podcast is actually about Trevor. We talked about Trevor being bigger, the weapons that Trevor has. I'm going to talk about what I believe the scheme will do to employ some of those guys in segment 3 and how it's going to specifically help Trevor Lawrence now that we've gone through them all. And then I'll tell you the pros and the cons of thinking that they still need one more guy. I think teams are going to always be looking for one more guy, especially at that wide receiver position. We'll do all of that for you here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you about Built Bar, I got some in the mail just yesterday, and they're absolutely delicious. They're the people who invented healthy and tasty, and it comes the latest gift. Here you go to your taste buds. You probably tried amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the protein infused marshmallow. That is the Puff. It has a different texture than the candy bar, but it is outstanding. And guess what? As chewy and as marshmallow as it is, and it's covered with 100% chocolate, just like the original Built Bar, you don't have to cut back and stop drooling because the macros stay on point, and they're packed with protein, very low sugar, low calories, and low carbs, so you can enjoy a healthy snack in between meals or just something to get you going until you can get through your work day. What do? You go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Now, make sure you use the promo code LOCK15. Find the one you like, delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. All you got to do is go to Built, and you can get a box of your assorted Built bars. My personal favorite is the salted caramel Built Bar, but make sure you try all the Built bars until you find the ones that you like, and make sure you hit that promo code, which is LOCKED15. And here's segment number 3, and you guys are joining us here on Locked On Jaguars as you usually do, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Now, so in the first segment, we talked about Trevor Lawrence going on a vacation with his teammates, a little field trip, as I call it, down in the Caribbean, building some camaraderie and cohesion and some chemistry. In segment 2, we ran down the guys that I think will be the main focus of him catching balls, at least from the wide receiver and tight end spot. And now I want to talk about usage, because if I talk about usage, I have to add the running backs. You have to add in Travis Etienne and James Robinson whenever he's available, and talk about the fact that Doug Peterson does spread this ball around. Do the Jaguars have an alpha receiver? I don't think they do. I don't think they have a traditional number one guy. There's a pro and con to having a number one guy. Pro and con. The pro is this: when you got a number one guy, that means he's real good. Everybody knows it, and ain't nothing they can do about it, right? The cons is sometimes other guys get lost, and you end up as a coach or as a quarterback forcing the ball to one person. And if that one person has to miss a game or two, like DeAndre Hopkins had last year or Devontae Adams, the better the quarterback, say like Aaron Rodgers, you don't miss him as much because you can find a way to run your scheme and not, lose games. That doesn't happen for every team. When Matt Ryan had Julio Jones, when Julio wasn't there, it seemed like they weren't even the same ball club. So that's the pro and the con of having a number one guy. How does it affect the Jaguars? I just keep going back to Philly. And I will tell you this now. There have been times in the past when you wish a team that was good, that was solid, that had a good team that was able to spread the ball around. There have been times when you watch teams like that, you notice, you feel like something is missing. You feel like something is missing. And if only they just had that one dude that could put that pressure on the team and ease the pressure off of everybody else, just like a guy you could just turn to and say, here, take us. Debo Samuel, that type of dude. Do the Jaguars have that? I don't think so. Will they need it? Depends on what you're asking me, what they need it for. Will they need it to get better, improve, and challenge and possibly win the division? I don't think so. Will they need it to make a playoff run? Probably not. Will they ever need it if they're going to win a Super Bowl? I'd say I'd lean towards yes. But then the coach of the Jaguars right now, Doug Peterson, would say, hold my beer, because we did it in Philly without that guy you're talking about. That guy that's going to demand $100 million at some point. That dude that's going to be a perennial all-pro. That Jamar Chase type player. They don't necessarily need it. I don't even know Cincy necessarily needs Jamar Chase because they have T. Higgins. But it's a luxury to have when you can get a guy like that on a rookie contract. So do I think at some point at the end of this season, the Jaguars will still be trying to find that guy? Yes. I just think that guy is going to be more and more difficult to find the more and more Trevor Lawrence and this team improves. Why would I say that? The better you are, the lower you pick. The better you are, the less you're willing to spend big money on a luxury in free agency because you think you're doing all right without it. The one thing they have working for them is this. You have Trevor Lawrence. And when you have a quarterback like that, players actually do want to play for a guy like Trevor Lawrence. If you're an ascending team with a guy like Trevor Lawrence, players want to play for a guy like that who they believe will also have them in the playoffs that will allow them to get more bread and more notoriety. So it's all a plus when it comes to Trevor, and it comes to his receivers, and it comes to his core. The thing goes back to this, and it's going to be a working theme here, and you guys have heard this before. They got to just get better on the field. If they do that, all of this stuff, you can go back and find, okay, this is the reason they got better. This is the reason they got better. This is the But if they don't get better on the field, you know what you're going to say? None of that stuff meant anything. That's just the way it goes. I think Trevor's going to make a big step. I think he's going to make a huge step. I think the focus that he has on his body, the rapport that he has with Doug Peterson, the chemistry that he has with his teammates and his wide receivers, and the fact that he's just going to be able to play quarterback this year is going to bode well for him and the Jaguars. Make sure you check on Locked On NFL, the podcast. I'm there every Wednesday with my man James Rapine, but it's a daily podcast Monday through Friday. Very, very good, fun show talking about everything from around the NFL. There's no topic that won't be discussed, and occasionally the Jaguars are also mentioned on Locked On NFL. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It's your man Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars. We're going to keep talking about players who can make an impact. We're going to Cisco in our next edition. I want to talk about Andre Cisco and how he could have a totally huge impact on this football team next year. We'll do that in our next session of Locked On Jaguars. Until then, you guys make sure you take care of each other, and we'll see you then.